Welcome back, everyone, to the Rooted podcast. My name is Michael Nesmith. This is my beautiful wife,
Allison.
And we're very happy to have you guys join us today. This is episode 2.
Yeah.
Was a little bit of a journey. We're still working some of the details out and figuring how this thing is going to go, but I'm actually having a pretty good time doing this. So thank you for convincing me to do this.
Was it me that convinced you?
Yes.
I think it was me that convinced you that we're calling it a podcast. I don't know if necessarily it was me that convinced you.
Yeah, I
think it was kind of a joint thing. You're not here unwillingly.
I would also like to give a big thanks to our director. Our director, he goes by the name of Liam. So
He's
Liam,
distracting me.
Yeah, he's distracting me as well. He's moving stuff around in the background there. All right, with today's episode, we wanted to kind of talk about something that's really important to us, and I think that with trainers and a lot of times with people, when it comes to working dogs, pet dogs specifically, it gets overlooked, and I don't think it usually gets as much attention as it needs to until it becomes a problem.
That's what I'm saying. Like it always comes to the table when it's either someone that's really blowing something completely out of proportion, or it's something that happened really bad and this really needs to be checked and figured out. I think if we're able to have the conversation, we can not only prevent it from becoming really bad, but also have the conversation to let some people that may be a little ignorant towards really truly what it's about to have animal husbandry.
Exactly. So our topic today is going to be husbandry, and more specifically towards dogs, because that's what we're dealing with. I think there's a couple of things that have kind of led to this being a topic, and one of the things is I saw a post on Facebook or somewhere, and it was kind of like off the cuff kind of backhanded joke.
Okay.
And then I reposted it. Well, I stole the idea and just made it better than the original post.
Oh God.
But I'm playing. But the post was, it was something along the lines of hey, a lot of these trainers, you can tell a lot of these trainers have never scrubbed kennels before.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously it was a joke.
Right.
To an extent, it was meant to be funny.
For sure.
And it got quite a bit of engagement.
Yeah.
But surprisingly to me, it also got some negative engagement. Some people were commenting on there hey, you don't learn anything scrubbing a kennel, and good luck trying to make a name for yourself scrubbing a kennel. And I was like, wow, I didn't really expect that.
Right.
I welcome it. I welcome that kind of criticism. But I didn't expect it. And I think that although it was a joke, there is some truth to it. And I think there's a lot that was lost in the message.
For sure. Most likely, it's probably the same mindset that we get where we've had apprentices come and kind of fade out pretty quickly, because literally their first 2 weeks is understanding kennel operations. And within kennel operations, this is where we really focus on, the cleanliness of the kennel runs, how the dogs are looked after, their weight logs, all of that, their collars, how they're broken on leads. It breaks down, and it's really not, truthfully, if you want to, it's not teaching a dog how to sit or go on a place command. It's all focusing on how you take care of the dog and the kennel operations. And not even that, the protocols that need to be followed in order to prevent, bad things from occurring, and I hate saying the bad things because I always feel like I put them out there and I don't want to put them out there. It's knock on wood every time. So if I say a very vague statement like that, it's because I'm a little superstitious.
Yeah, I think something else that may get kind of just overlooked in passing and not intentional is, to us, the most important thing is animal husbandry, is the husbandry that you have for the dog. I personally don't care if you are the best dog trainer in the world. If you cannot keep weight on your dog, if you cannot keep your dog in conditions that are non-neglectful, and,
right.
and they're it doesn't matter to me that you know how to teach a dog really cool things, because you don't have the foundation, the most important foundation of this husbandry. What is husbandry? Maybe some people are kind of new to this or not understanding.
Well, husbandry is often used more for like livestock in farmers that are keeping, let's say, cattle and so forth. But transferring it over to the dog aspect, the husbandry is the overall mental and physical condition of the animal in your care. So when you look at that as a whole, when we talk about a dog being locked away in a garage that's getting 0 to no mental stimulation, they are, pooping all over the floor and no one's cleaning it up, that they're getting fed, really crappy things that are not good for their health, and that alone is a very dramatized example, but that alone just kind of gives you the understanding of that is the opposite of proper animal husbandry.
Yeah, so proper animal husbandry is taking care of kind of the basic necessities to an animal's life, right? Like their food, their water, their shelter. I would also include their grooming in that. And then, of course, like their health, like things like vaccinations, or maybe the dog has gotten an injury. What are we doing to keep up on that injury, make sure that the dog is recovering how they should be? So like I said, I think if we don't have that as dog trainers, I don't really care outside of that how great of a dog trainer.
Well, in person, we can speak on experience that we have seen many dogs, especially on the pet side of things, who weren't in proper health, that related so much to their behavior.
For sure.
And I mean, I can think of one example of the dog we had in our care it was blind. It was fully blind. And you can only imagine that with the owners not taking the proper necessities towards the training up until this point, the dog was extremely nervy. It was a flight risk like no other. Extremely aggressive based off of the fear. And, when you are told like, the dog just has cloudy eyes, that's not really a thing.
Yeah, so. and it's, we're not saying this to be like pretentious towards owners that have let these things slide. Our goal with kind of this episode is to provide information and say like, hey, this stuff is so important.
For sure.
If you don't know that your dog has a very difficult time seeing,
right.
And we just try and approach the behavior from a behavioral standpoint, we may be missing the mark. Right? Like, oh no, the dog is being kind of reactive because he's nervy and things are surprising him. Right? I think that's. I think the other thing that comes with it as well is like we brought up a little bit, but like grooming, right? Like we see dogs with like really long nails or really matted hair. For sure, that is going to affect the behavior of that animal because they're in pain. Like they're consistently in pain, and then they're going to be responsive in ways to their environment because of that pain.
And even just behavior alone, like all it takes is the dog being in pain, and you touching the area that's in pain, and now it's bitten you. Well, very quickly now, this dog that's never bitten you has a behavior that's established of, hey, if I'm in discomfort, this is the behavior I'm going to choose to do because, hey, it won for me last time. So, it is extremely important to kind of be on top of not only the group, and to be honest with you guys, I have a lot of Malinois, and for as far as the grooming aspect goes, I don't need to get it groomed by a professional groomer like you do with like a golden retriever or a Caucasian Shepherd or whatever it may be, right? I don't need to.
The Caucasian Shepherd, those would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to groomers. I don't know how you do it, but I choose that because that's the kind of dog that I am seeking. That's a dog that works for me.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't want to miss this point right now.
Okay.
Because I think that you just brought something up that's really good.
Okay.
Some of the best people that I've seen have like, quote unquote, like a natural capability of dealing with like those asshole dogs.
Yeah.
Like dogs with just like that temperamental. You said Caucasian Shepherd at the groomer, and it brought me to that.
Yeah.
It is groomers. Like they deal with these dogs a lot of times that come in and are super uncomfortable, and
they have to stand for a while too.
Yeah, they got to stand up on their table, and they're going to trim them, and like they like groomers are generally really good with dealing with those dogs that no one wants to deal with.
Yeah, but my point is like if you're going to get a dog that you have to get groomed, you have to.
Sorry. What was bubbling up in there?
It was a mud duck.
Yeah, it was a Canadian mud duck. All right, so we're back. We had some technical difficulties. Allie is lactose intolerant.
Not accurate.
She had a little rumble in the jungle, if you know what I'm talking about.
He's disgusting.
Yeah, so I think they're called Maryland mud ducks. What they're called.
Inaccurate statement again.
Right?
I feel like we need to put like something underneath how Facebook would do about the COVID shit.
Oh, you're one of those liberals.
Like,
one of those liberals over here. Why don't you dye your hair blue, bud?
No, I think we should like honestly, when Michael says something, be like, not factual.
She's a liberal.
Definitely not, but sure.
Opposites attract. Anyway, so speaking...
Let's go back to topic.
Yeah. So we were... Obviously, the whole kind of underlying topic of this is animal husbandry.
Yeah, and just giving a background on what it is, what it means to us, how we find it very important, and then we were talking about how it can relate to behavior.
Yes. Very important key. So this is where kind of outside of the obvious of animal husbandry and care, this is where it really ties into dog training because behavior is what we do.
And why, if the apprentices would last more than 2 weeks of cleaning kennels, they would understand how this is impactful to training.
Yeah, and I don't mind if they don't last also. Get them out of here. Only the strong survive, bud. The same for everybody. You gave us an example of the dog that had cataracts, aka cloudy eyes, and that having an effect on the dog's behavior.
Yeah.
Where that kind of pushes me is in the direction of our working dogs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we see quite a bit in working dogs is this idea that is somewhat based in fact that a police dog is a tool.
For sure.
Right? On the surface level, for sure, they're a tool.
Yeah.
But outside of that, and I think what also kind of hinders sometimes the husbandry of it is that people get really locked into like, hey, this is just a tool, or this is a tool, and they look at it as such, and they forget the actual dog part of the dog.
Yeah, but you can even strip it away and you can just say, okay, we're going to focus on the word tool. Okay, so first thing that comes to mind is, let's say, a drill. Okay?
I was going to say your ex.
But a drill, for instance. And let's say you have this really nice drill. It's super expensive. It works phenomenally.
Not a Ryobi. Okay.
And you leave it outside. And you leave it outside and there's a rainstorm. And then you forget about it. And a few weeks go by and this once phenomenal tool that you had...
That's disrespectful, bro.
I agree. Doesn't work as well.
Or at all.
Or at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
And so if you just take it down to, okay, they're a tool. All right. Well, every tool has to have proper care in order to be effective, right? Every tool, whether it's a materialistic thing or a material thing, I should say, or an actual animal.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think where I'm kind of leaning towards a little bit, or where I'm kind of guiding the conversation, is that we get into these like this thought process, and you hear things like, "Hey, if you don't work, you don't eat," or we're doing existential feeding, which by no means am I saying I disagree with existential feeding.
Can I pause you though? Can you explain what existential feeding is?
I was just about to until you paused me.
Well, I wanted to make sure.
How dare you?
Don't even get me
So
started.
existential feeding is basically, hey, this dog, let's say that their caloric intake for the day is 4 cups of dog food.
Okay.
And that's what they need to be where they're at.
Okay.
Existential feeding means that the dog gets those 4 cups of food throughout the day working for it.
Yep.
Some people say hand feeding, and they kind of mean existential feeding, even though it can be different. Because if we're doing tracking, maybe the dog's not being fed from my hand.
Right.
Right? But it just means, in general, they're getting those calories for the day.
Through working.
Through working.
Got it.
Where I think sometimes there's a lapse or there's a gap in that connection is that people say, okay, well, I want to existentially feed my dog. And when I'm saying people, what I'm kind of referring to is some police trainers and some police vendors that they say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that principle, but they meet it with fasting.
Yeah.
They say, okay, well, this dog's not working for food, or before we even give him the chance to work for food, I'm going to fast him for 2 days first.
Right.
And then maybe after 2 days, they get the dog out, and and this dog's supposed to get 4 cups of food, so he's already down 8 cups of food.
Yeah.
Right? They get him out, and then that first day back to working after his fast, maybe he gets 1.5 cups to 2 cups.
Yeah.
So now he's down the 8 cups from the 2 days.
Plus the 2.5.
Plus the 2.5 to 2 cups today. And then we get to the point where these dogs are on course, maybe. Maybe the agency has them, and their standard for the caloric intake before course may have been 4 cups of food.
Right.
And they were maintaining their weight, or maybe even gaining some weight if they're in a younger age.
But now they're burning more.
Now they're out doing tracks on tracks on tracks. They're doing building searches. They're doing all of these activities that are burning a lot of calories.
For sure.
And to just call it what it is, this is compounded over months at a time, and the incompetence of the training staff leads for a dog can lead for a dog to become extremely emaciated.
Yeah.
And some of the difficulty with this is that a dog doesn't go from like, okay, I am, let's say, 68 pounds to I am 50 pounds in a week or in a couple days. So the weight can be so gradually like kind of lost that if someone is seeing the dog every day and there's also other dogs maybe on this course and they're all kind of losing weight like that, it can almost become the norm.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't seem like anything is out of the ordinary. No, they're on course, they're burning a lot of calories. Yeah, but if they're burning a lot of calories, we also need to supplement the calories.
And for sure, and there's probably also a lot of like accidental social learning with that, meaning like, you know, you may be a new handler, you're on course, you're listening, you're following all the instructions, and all the other dogs are looking like this, so it's kind of like, this must be how it's supposed to be and what it is. And I can see the social pressure that one may feel, being like, this doesn't feel like this is going to work out the way they're saying it's going to be, or this, you know, I'll eventually get weight on my dog, or, you know, and then it just doesn't seem like it would ever pan out to be what they are intending it to be.
Yeah, I think the other hard part to it is that it kind of is normal for a dog that may be living a more like sedentary life at a vendor,
right,
to get to their course where they're going to be burning more calories,
for sure,
to kind of lose some weight.
For sure.
Like that is normal. But
it's kind of like us going on boot camp or something, right?
The issue is when it is a dramatic amount of weight, percentage-wise based off of that dog.
Right.
As well as when the dogs are being or looking emaciated, they're not just losing weight and they have no muscle structure.
Right.
They have no tone to what is there. And to me, I think that obviously has a huge impact on the performance of that animal.
Well, it's impossible to argue that. Like if you think about any just an athlete, right? You think you're like, I'm training for a marathon or whatever it may be, and you're following the guidelines of how many miles you're supposed to run a day and blah, 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 blah. But then you take away the nutritional aspect and you take away the health aspect of it, but you're still hitting your miles, you're still hitting your markers every week. Eventually, your body's not going to be able to perform at the level it needs to based off its health. Not because you're not hitting every milestone that you're supposed to hit, and now I ran 12 miles, tomorrow I'm going to run 14. That's not the way it works. Your body needs fuel, and a dog doesn't change. Like that is the same thing for them.
Absolutely, and I think that like this is a difficult conversation to have publicly for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is that we are a police dog vendor.
Yeah.
And being a police dog vendor, when you sell dogs, you sell them kind of the industry standard to selling police dogs is that you sell them with a health and a workability guarantee, right? The health guarantee basically states the dog is not going to have any genetic defects.
Right.
They're going to pass their x-rays
Like
and
elbows,
their hips,
like
their
that.
spine. And then to me, I think one of the only ways, which is not going to probably happen in my lifetime, but one of the only ways that we can truly fix this or a part of this problem when it comes to police and military dogs is that we remove any workability guarantee. I think that a workability guarantee is a potential. So when it's done right, for sure. Like we're a vendor, we've had dogs returned to us that just, they seem like they were the dog, some things happened, and they weren't the dog. That absolutely happened. So this is, just 1 second, this is not an excuse for like no dog should ever be returned. But what I'm saying is if there's a workability guarantee, what that also gives someone is the ability to do bullshit with a dog and that dog not take to the bullshit training that they're doing or the shitty husbandry practices that they're doing, and then before the guarantee runs out, they're like, oh well, yeah, we kind of starved this dog, and his collar doesn't really fit over his head anymore, and man, we really made some mistakes. But he's also not showing that he has workability anymore. So, well, the workability guarantee is still there.
Right.
So what that guarantee generally means is industry standard wise is that you get a replacement dog or a credit for a replacement dog.
Right.
Well, these problems can't ever be fixed if that, you see what I'm saying? Like if
for
that
sure,
is
there's
it,
like a checklist.
Yeah.
Right? There's a checklist that they could go through where it's like, okay, dog is healthy, check. The dog conditioning is good, check. The dog is, passing, let's say he's killing it on tracking, check. The dog is obedience, check. And then they get to like, let's say bite work, the dog's mediocre, okay? That to me is when the workability comes into place. Workability should not come into place when the dog's health is ever in question.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? Like there needs to be a checklist with that in regards where it's like, okay, fine, you want to have a workability guarantee, and I totally get it. I mean, my daughter's raising a PSA dog right now, and it's not a police dog, but it's not hitting the bar in the training for where she needs it to be in order to compete with. Yeah. Okay, the dog just doesn't have it, and that's okay. Great dog.
That's what comes with it.
It comes with it.
For sure.
Right?
I think as like vendors.
Vendors.
Where's the champagne?
Are you from Lord of the Rings? It sounds like something like very like
as
medieval.
Vendors, like we have the opportunity or our opportunity to select dogs is I'm going to go test these dogs out for a day, maybe a couple of days, make sure that they're healthy, and then I buy the dog.
Right.
And now that is my dog that I have. There's not a workability guarantee that comes with that. So what ends up happening is you have to develop yourself.
Yeah.
To be able to select the actual dogs that are going to be capable of the job that you as the vendor need them to be able to do. When these police agencies have their like working guarantees, it's just a safety net for like, okay, yeah, I really messed up with this dog.
Right. Let's see how this
goes. Let's just bring him back now and see. It's like, oh, well, this dog doesn't know how to out. Well, let's put an e-collar on him and fry him on an e-collar. and now the dog has handler aggression issues or doesn't want to engage right away. It's like, well, whatever, he's in the workability guarantee. Let's just send him back and get another one and try this again with him.
Yeah.
Like, something has got to change with that. That just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It obviously this topic hits a little bit of a chord for you, and of course it hits a little bit of a chord for me, but I think you're really nailing the points, and it's kind of actually hard to chime in because everything you're saying is so true, and the conversations that we've had with handlers and the conversations that, you know, that we've been privy to, it's really unfortunate that the guidance sometimes is really missed.
Yes. You know what else is really missed? You know what else is really missed?
Guys, I'm really nervous.
No, something else that I find is really missed, and like, please, no one be offended by this. But I've started to draw some, in my research, to draw some conclusions or some connections, I would say. And some of these connections are every time, and I'm very passionate about husbandry of these dogs.
You are.
Some of the connections that I draw is it has become a semi-normal thing for some of these canine handlers to be overweight. And this is not me fat shaming at all. I'm just saying there's a lot of canine handlers that are overweight, and you could tell that they really love food. So like they understand the value of food. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm hitting what you're putting down.
So some of these fat canine handlers have the skinniest dogs.
A little bit of...
What? Next time you're going to eat your 4th cheeseburger, maybe give half of it to the dog. You need the caloric deficit. The dog does not need it because I can see his heartbeat. And then you're going to say, well, he doesn't really want to work. Or he resource guards his food. Oh, so do you. So do you. What do you mean? That doesn't even make any sense.
Okay. I'm gonna, that's a great point, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Okay. But I'm also gonna say, along the husbandry aspect, we've also seen some fat dogs, very unhealthy fat dogs, and they're questioning why their dog isn't working that well. Very
true, but kind of an outlier.
It is an outlier.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not even mad at him. If I see a fat police, I'm like, hey, you could be.
So the next police seminar that my husband is teaching, if your dog is there and it is fat, please bring it up to him that you aren't, that he can't be mad at you.
No, I'm not. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna be mad. I want to I'm okay. I don't want. All right, since we're starting this, let's go. All right.
Are you taking your shirt off?
Yeah, I'm just loosening it up. The other thing that I have noticed over, because now this is not just with police dogs, this is also with sporting dogs, like people, PSA, have you heard that sport?
Michael.
I'm not sure what the SA stands for, but in that sport, PSA, and IGP, and French Ring, there's a lot of wonderful, amazing dogs. Those handlers, the vast majority of those handlers care a lot about their animals.
Absolutely.
Right? A small percentage there also believe that their dogs are very fit just off the fact that their dogs are skinny. Does that make sense? They have very skinny dogs, and they're like, oh, well, the dog is fit because he's skinny. Like, no, he's not fit.
Yeah.
Fit means that there's muscle tone, there's muscle definition, the conformation is good. You can see some, maybe a rib or two, but it's not because there's not the calories there, right? So we have to be careful that we're not saying like, oh, the dog is skinny, so that means it's fit and it's an athlete. Yeah. No, that doesn't make him an athlete.
No.
And the reason I was bringing up the sports is just, it is not just the police dog world.
No.
And the disclaimer to this is we're talking about small percentages of police dogs and small percentages of the sport world.
Yeah, but I think where it hits home mainly, if we can kind of like backtrack a little bit, is definitely when it comes to being a vendor, and very much when you, we're not a kennel size of like 200 plus working dogs, and that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But when you have a dog and and it's going through course and everything's going really well and all the updates have been really hitting the bar and it's like everything's great, best dog, and then that workability that you talk about, and I think you're right, it's going to take a really long time for it actually to change, and it's something that we're actually taking initiative and making some edits in our contracts and stuff like that moving forward. Because what hits us harder is when we get a dog back that's fucked up, right? Yeah, that we get a dog that's completely emaciated, like words from our vet, emaciated, right? Where it's taking 3 of us to get a collar off of their head. And guys, this has not happened once. This has been something that has happened more than once. So I think why you hear Michael speak so passionately about it, or why you hear us even bringing up this topic, is that when you talk about, yes, this is a business, but yes, we care so much about the animal husbandry, and we understand the fact that Malinois have a really fast metabolism. They're really, really high energy.
And it's not uncommon for them to lose weight. We raise dogs.
I was gonna bring up, like, I have a dog who, Harriet. She averages about 82 pounds. She's a really big female, and she is constantly fluctuating. But me, as her owner, and as well as my staff, have to recognize, okay, it's colder out and she's burning more calories when she's outside on her potty breaks, or she's working a lot more, or she's swimming a lot more. We have to recognize that she needs more calories for that day, just as much as we have to recognize a puppy that's growing needs a bigger collar. Okay, these are things that we should not miss, and the vendors should not have to be penalized because you missed the basic husbandry. And that basic husbandry that you missed affects the dog's workability. Period. I don't care if a dog is emaciated, it's not performing well on course at all. And most of the times, crazy enough, I would say 98% of the times, those dogs are now on the street performing just as well as they should have been with the original agency if they would have finished course not emaciated.
Can I just do a callback? Can you guys clarify what we mean about the collar not coming off the dog's head? Because we were talking about skinny dogs, and I feel like it won't make sense. So maybe.
Okay, so our director just asked us to clarify what we mean about collar being stuck on their head. So many of us use fur savers. So basically, they're not like a Velcro or a buckle or anything like that. You have to slip them on and off their head. So basically, sizing is super important for that, and it's extremely important to be vigilant of the dog's growth throughout this time when they're wearing it, because I don't know about you, I don't carry bolt cutters on me. I feel like that's the only thing that would actually be able to cut them off of them. So that's what we mean by a collar not fitting on their head. Over their head.
Yeah, specifically in kind of the cases that we're referring to is just younger dogs that have been sold. Mm-hmm. And we have to use our detective skills and assume that a fur saver was put on them at this young age, and then the dog's structure has grown. And then the dog gets returned to us, and now that collar that was put on them probably the day that they got there no longer fits back over that dog's head.
Yeah.
So we have to either cut the collar off or really trying to yank on it to get this off of the dog's head, and it's not a fun experience, and it's a very simple a problem that is avoidable. The context of this entire podcast is not for us to be sitting on like a pedestal or a high horse.
Yeah, I was about to.
We know that things can happen. We know that things can get missed. And and sometimes those things aren't the end of the world. The problem is when there is like repetitive behavior, and it starts to become more of a systemic problem within a department
For
or
sure.
within an agency.
And I think, and I was about to say that, it's like Mike and I, when we talk about these few cases, it's not necessarily that we see them just happening internally, because that's not the case. The majority of our dogs, knock on wood, are pretty successful. But these are other vendors that have brought it to our attention, or other agencies that have brought it to our attentions, or canine handlers that are too, I wouldn't say afraid to speak up, but have not spoken up about it. Or,
No, I would say a lot of them are afraid to speak up. This is their livelihood.
Right.
And before we kind of even got into this, like, we have had some discussions about this. Like, hey, what are some of the potential ramifications for us? The reason why we're having this conversation, we think it's really important to have, is we know that there's probably going to be some backlash by it, but we think that the only way to make adjustments is to have these conversations.
Well, I think the biggest thing that made me want to do it is when, our trainers come to us, and, we have trainers all across North America, right? And they're saying to us, hey, what are you guys going to do about this? Like, this can't happen. Like, look at the condition of this dog. And when they're speaking to us, and it's not like I'm trying to act like mother hen, but in a way, I do feel an ounce of responsibility to say, hey, we got to change something about this. And I don't know if it's about the vendors coming together or the agencies coming together, or about us all having an open conversation to say, okay, how do we get the dogs to perform at the level that we need them to? Because they are a fantastic tool that we get to utilize, and also make sure that their health is a top priority.
Yeah, because ultimately, like that, and again, the vast majority across the board of police agencies and departments are prioritizing those things. It's really refreshing when I get to go places and I see them have rehabilitation.
Well, even the
tools.
Organization that you're part of, Canines United, they have a whole medical aspect that they teach handlers how to deal with, in moments of trauma with their dogs. Like, that is husbandry in a sense, where you're like, I'm prepared if something were to happen to my dog.
Yes.
In the line of fire.
Yes. But like seeing them overall, just the vast majority of these agencies and these departments are prioritizing this. But it's those outliers that also still need to get with the time. Hey, this is very important. You're not going to be a top level performing agency. Your dogs aren't going to perform very well. You're going to have to keep it comes back to money as well, right? Like, okay, maybe right now they're not paying for replacement dogs, but what they are paying for is starting a course over.
Yeah.
They're paying for the time that handler is off the road. So administration needs to get involved in these things.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be and really try and figure out the most effective way that we can make sure that this is prioritized.
For sure. And I think we're not the only vendors out there that, if a trainer was, or if a unit or agency, whatever, was having issues in the training realm, that wouldn't be not willing to give advice or to come out or to hear, what's going on, or to try to troubleshoot, without it always leading to that, like you were saying, that caloric deprivation. Like, I think that there is plenty of trainers like yourself that are more than willing and happy to say, okay, I know the dog, maybe I can aid in some way, shape, or form. And then that way too, there's also this peace of mind where it's like, okay, the dog's in great condition, and then check, it missed this one. Okay, the dog washed.
Yeah, for sure.
Program.
Like, I am totally aware that the vast majority of dogs on planet Earth are incapable of being a police dog.
Yeah.
They don't
so
have
the next time you call us to say your dog's a great police dog, just remember that statement.
I know that the most of them don't have that. So I've actually never take it personal if a dog is going to be returned to me because they don't have the capability of doing that. Oh, my bad. I thought they did. They didn't. Whatever. The only issue that I have is when it comes to husbandry.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And it's true. Without the husbandry, you won't have the behavior that you're seeking for the dog to have. And I truly believe it, and I've seen evidence of it.
For sure. I think two solutions to this problem. pretty simple.
Okay.
We need what's preached everywhere. We need vendor accountability.
Yeah.
Vendors need to do the right thing. Absolutely. The other side to that is that we also need police agency accountability when it comes to these working dogs as well, particularly in the training aspect, in the training realm. If we have vendors that are going to be accountable for the dogs that they provide, and we have agencies that are going to be accountable for the dogs that they're training, there's no problem.
Right.
The problem happens when one of those two parties decide to be shitty.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest, I asked myself, how did they get there? How did they get to the position where the dog is losing this much weight and they're not recognizing it? And I'm like, are they having issues with training, or did they not have any options? You know, I talk about like the training toolbox, right? Is there nothing they can figure out, you know, versus starving the dog in order for them to get them to work? Like, there has to be something where, I don't know if there needs to be like more outreach for like seminars or instructors coming in or something.
That's a whole nother like can of worms that we're going to open if we go down like those solutions.
Yeah.
Because like then we got to talk about like, well, who gets along with this trainer,
Yeah.
who doesn't, or this person's ego is going to be bruised. Like, I just think if they take anything from it, vendor accountability, agency accountability.
Yeah.
That's it. Do right by the dog. If the dog doesn't have it,
That's okay.
he doesn't have it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
He doesn't have it. But if your training director doesn't have it, your training director doesn't have it.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
You're just
get
saying
a
like
new
black
training
and white.
director.
Black and white.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
just
there's
keep it
no need for,
like
for
us.
gray area. Yo, you guys cancel her, bro. Cancel her.
It can't be canceled. It's only episode 2. Like, save it to like episode 7 or something.
7 is crazy. All right. I think
that wraps up tonight's episode.
wrap it up.
We thank you for joining us for episode 2, discussing animal husbandry. We love to hear your feedback, stories, comments, and of course, I'm sure there's going to be some criticism. So lay it on us. We can't wait to read them. And if you have any suggestions for our next week's topic, let us know.
Thank you. Come again.